You know, this is nice. You can look right into the sun from here. I wish it was the view the Japanese had at Pearl Harbor, but they came the other way. My name is Russell Ramsland. I'm originally from West Texas. My background includes a political science degree from Duke University that I never thought was going to come in so handy. I did, as Mark say, spent some time in the Reagan campaign in '79. I spent a little time on Capitol Hill. I worked with the Reagan White House on the Star Wars program during the '80s. But most of my life has been spent on various businesses in the private sector. One of those is the Texas Embassy in London. We're trying to make the world safe for tacos. And we've been doing that for about 16 years now. And we've been able to watch the joys of socialism at work as Thatcherism died out and the socialism has come in. One of the interesting results of that is that we generally try to stay friendly with the veterinarians. And the reason for that is really practical. At night, you can get an x-ray from a veterinarian. But in the National Health Service, if you slip on our stairs and break some, you have a 3-day wait. That's not a joke. That's true. Anyway, it's strangling that country. What Mark doesn't know is that I'm also in the oil and gas drilling business, and so that makes me a two-time enemy of the state. But we continue to persevere in spite of the help that we get from our government. Look, after Reagan, I thought I would never get involved in politics again. I thought we as a country had so thoroughly rediscovered our roots and our tenets of limited government and free enterprise and people operating within that system that we would just not have to relearn that lesson. And I became complacent. But I will tell you, as the rhetoric of the entire Democratic Party has become purely socialist, and as I have realized they had a serious shot at dominating our government, I also realized 2 years ago with great dread that political activities were back on my calendar for the first time in 20 years. You know, people don't fully realize how incredibly dangerous socialism is. They forget that in 1917, Lenin was a socialist. He was a socialist in Russia for 4 years, and he took the GMP over those 4 years down to 14% of what it was when he took office. And that's when he went over to communism, because it was the only way to keep it. People forget that when Hitler came to power, he was with the National Socialist Party. And fascism was simply the political process that he employed to force its implementation. So you have to take socialism seriously. It doesn't end happily. I didn't come here tonight to make any overtly theological points, but it's hard to avoid one when our very concept of government is based on the Judeo-Christian ideal that men are created equal and God enabled them and endowed them with certain inalienable rights. And that sort of implies a natural progression from God to the individual man, to his family, and then trickling on down to those state, local, and federal governments that are supposed to serve the citizenry. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's going to surprise you. You know, socialists and West Texans do have one common belief. We both believe that to kill a snake, you got to cut off the head, not the tail. And unfortunately, the socialists have decided that the way you do that is you just cut God out of the everyday dialogue of a country. And you leave all of those things to man to do. And when you do that, you just flip it over. So that no longer do you have government on the bottom, you now have government on the top. You have the big central government, state, local, and eventually when you get to the bottom of the pile, it's you, the individual. And unfortunately, the only thing you have, not life, not liberty, well, actually you do have life for a while as long as you're economically useful to the state, but after that you have Obamacare. So look, there was a time when liberals and Democrats were not socialists, but that's gone. The new so-called progressives are pure socialists. Their goal is the complete elimination of the very concepts that defined America and made it exceptional and made it a shining city on the hill to the rest of the world. It's very interesting having a business overseas. There's sort of a love-hate relationship in England. They sort of resent the colonists, but they also admire them because they know at one time they dominated the world and we struggled to survive, and now it's just complete flip-flop, and it's the difference in the systems. Anyway, I find all this terrifying for my children, but you know what? The progressives are not our worst enemy. In truth, it is as Walt Kelly's cartoon character Pogo said, we have met the enemy and it's us. We have allowed this to happen. We have not stood up for our Constitution. We have forgotten the importance of the rule of law. We have asked others to walk the blocks in our elections. We have asked others to run for office, write the letters to the editor, monitor our school books, and teach our children their values. I could go on and on. Now, we have been generous. We are the most generous country in the world. We have been well-intentioned. We have been phenomenally successful, but we have gotten lazy. We have allowed political correctness to so seep into our collective consciences, and we have been too lazy and comfortable to declare it to be the utter foolishness that it is. And you know, the result is that we've sort of arrived at a point where we almost can't communicate with each other anymore because tax breaks are things the government gives to people who've never paid taxes. Racism? Well, racism charges are leveled by people who want to modify the statue of Lady Liberty. You know, today she's got a blindfold on. She can't see what race, color, creed, or national origin you are. But these people want to enact laws that make it mandatory for her to lift up that blindfold, see what color you are, and then tell you what the law says about you. There's something wrong. I think John Kennedy got it right when in 1963 at the Rathaus Schönenberg in West Berlin he said, look, today in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is Ich bin ein Berliner. All free men, whether they may live, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in those words. Kennedy meant, I'm a Berliner, and all free men are one with the people of Berlin in their fight for freedom. Well, today, we are all of us Americans. We're just that. We must not allow ourselves to devolve into balkanized sets of hyphenated Americans. We are all Americans. And we must get off our couches and become involved in this multi-year struggle of ideas for the very soul of what America is and what it stands for. And we can win this war. For God has indeed shed His grace on America and given it His blessing. We cannot lose. We cannot lose if we simply decide not to. So join a Republican or a Tea Party group and learn to walk neighborhoods or man phone banks. Volunteer to be an election judge or a poll watcher. Write letters to the editor. Call into talk shows. Call and write your congressman at the state and federal level and do it often. Be a pest. Engage your, you'll know you're successful because you'll get a Christmas card. Engage your neighbors. Encourage them to vote. Most importantly, start talking to your children. You are going to be amazed at how nice they are. If you don't know how to talk to them, to my Tea Party meeting. About that. This war is all about deaths by 1,000 cuts. So start sharpening your blades and inflicting a few of your own. Finally, most critical, when you go to vote, vote all the way down the ballot. For the truth is that some of the most important races to you are actually local. That's where more of your money is spent, as far as your taxing. But down the ballot races are often ignored because conservative voters have an unfortunate tendency to avoid voting in a race where they don't actually know something about the candidate. This is admirable, except the other side is voting down the ballot winning.